Peace. I just wanted to take a moment and build a little bit about teaching and parenting. And one thing that I've been seeing recently on Facebook and some of these other social networks is people making a statement, I'm teaching my children. I'm building with my babies. And in my experience, I've only basically seen people expressing this because they had three basic things going on in their life. Either they were a new parent and they were just proud of the things that they're actually doing now, and that's the first time they've been experiencing a parental role, so they're sharing these things about what they're doing because they're excited, it's new. And that's one instance where I've seen people saying, I'm teaching my babies, because this is the first child that they actually had. The second instance I've seen is people who've had some type of parental issues going on in the past, whether it was some parental alienation, something was going on in their household, if they were unfit, or if they got their children taken away from them, or whatever the reasons were because of that. Their sense of parenting doesn't have a level of stability anymore. So they often talk about, I'm teaching my children, I'm building my babies, to seek some type of validation. Because in the past, they didn't feel secure for whatever reason that they were an effective parent. So that's one reason that I see people talking about, I'm teaching my babies, I'm building with my babies, because they were insecure as a parent for whatever reason in the past. The third example of people constantly talking about, I'm teaching, I'm building with my babies, is people who strive to use their children as an excuse or a shield so that they don't have to do anything for anybody else, especially other children. And these are people who constantly claim, I'm teaching my babies, I'm building my babies, I'm building my babies, so that they appear as if they're so invested and fixated on what they're doing at home, they just ain't got time to do nothing for anybody else outside of their front door. So I've seen people use that phrase for that reason too, to try to make an excuse for what they really don't want to do for nobody else. Like I said, saying we're teaching our babies and our building with our babies is no different than saying we're feeding our babies, we're clothing our babies, we're providing shelter for our children. As a parent, that's a basic necessity. That's nothing that we should be striving to seek any type of validation, any type of rewards or accomplishments for. That's what we're required to do. It's a thankless job. Now, as we evolve and we expand our consciousness as parents and become more aware of the role that our children's peers play in their life, peer pressure, the type of social environments that our children are in our neighborhoods, at school, in any environment that they go into, as well as what's going on in our community, that expanded consciousness makes us as parents begin to expand our role and responsibility beyond what's going on in our own personal household. In other words, we begin to consider that it's not just about my children anymore, it's about our children. What's going on with our babies. We have a common phrase we use, the babies are the greatest. It's not my babies are the greatest, it's the babies, or our babies are the greatest, regardless of what they look like, regardless of what condition they're in. As parents, and as we grow in our consciousness, we begin to take more of an effective role and responsibility to the children that is beyond just the children growing up in our household. We become more mothers to the motherless and fathers to the fatherless, because our role and responsibility grows along with our consciousness. So that is something that people should be acknowledged for, because that's something that people are not necessarily doing and that they're not necessarily required to do. Providing shelter for a child that doesn't really have a stable household in your neighborhood or in your community. Providing a meal for children that is not really getting consistent meals on a daily basis at their home. Giving clothing to children in your community or parents that don't necessarily have access to clothing in the same way that you may have it. That's something that people should be acknowledged for, because they're not required to do those type of things, and it's showing a level of love, consideration, and consciousness that's beyond what's just going on in their own household. So just want to elaborate a little bit more on that, and to give people a little more insight into the type of parenting that is necessary for us to really make transformative changes in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and in our society as a whole, because people need to start looking beyond their own front door and taking responsibility and supplementing the education, oftentimes supplementing even the income of the households of children that are growing up with the things that we may be providing for our own children that they're lacking in. And this is something that you can't really encourage people to do. This is something that you can't really make people do. It has to be something that comes from within, something that is a level of proactiveness and something that people actually care about doing. So the next time you see people talking about, I'm teaching, I'm building with my babies, you have to keep in mind, what are the three basic reasons why they're doing that? Is it because they're a new parent? Is it because there's something that was lacking in their past parentally that has them striving to go out and seek some type of validation as a parent today? Or is it because they're just sitting back and they're not really interested in helping anybody else out? All they're about is me and mine. Regardless of whatever those reasons are, or other reasons that people may have, it's not the most effective approach or mentality to have when it comes to providing the needs for the children in our community that may not have parents that's in a household, or that may not have a lot of the access to the opportunities that our children may have in our own personal household. It takes a village. And I know how cliche that sounds, but it's literally true. It literally takes a collective body of parenting in order for us to change a lot of these conditions that's going on in our neighborhoods and our communities. So this was inspiring, it was empowering, it was educating for those of you who want to get more of a practical perspective of what we really need to be doing outside of the creature comforts of our own household, and how we can be more of an asset to those children who, our children may not be living in our household, but they're living in our neighborhoods, they're living in our communities, they are living in our world, and they are no less important than our own children that came from our own loins, so in our own womb. So peace, and have a beautiful day.